Good afternoon and welcome to Wholesome Roots. Today I am participating in a collaboration with Part-Time Permies, and we are doing a winter dinner off the homestead collaboration. I'm not sure if that's the correct title, but something to that effect. And so what I am going to do right now is harvest the kale for our dinner. This kale is actually from last spring. It was planted down the middle of our asparagus bed, and the asparagus grew over the top of it, and we didn't see it all summer long. But now that the asparagus has died back, the kale is popped up inside out of the branches, and here it is, kale for harvesting. It's really doing well. Some of the leaves are freezer damaged or cold damaged, but most of them are looking pretty healthy. And we are going to harvest some of this kale to make my all-time favorite meal. This is my deserted island food. I think I've mentioned it before in a vlog that if I was to have to live on a deserted island for the rest of my life and only eat one food, what would it be? Kale soup. Specifically Portuguese kale soup. I'm making it a little bit different today because I don't have pork neck bones to start my broth. I normally get some pork neck bones at the market when I'm making it, but I just received a package from my mom from Massachusetts from the Portuguese grocery store. She sent me some genuine, authentic Portuguese chouriço. That is a very important ingredient in this soup, so you can't make it without it. And we don't have that kind of chouriço down here. We have the Spanish chouriço, and the Portuguese chouriço is hard to come by, so my mama had to send it to me for my Christmas present. So I'm gonna get maybe another handful because I have all the kids this weekend and they love this soup, so I'm gonna get me another handful because Vivian and Dalton, being older, have grown up with it, and it's just one of those staple foods that they always want to eat when they go home to visit in Massachusetts, and they always love it when I make it here in Georgia. So this is our main ingredient off of the homestead, is our fresh homegrown kale. Pretty awesome, huh? So I just realized my carrot's looking pretty sad from the really low temps that we got that were completely unexpected. So I'm gonna harvest a couple of those to add to my, whoops, I just broke that off. Now I gotta dig and find it. To add to my kale soup. I don't normally use carrots in my kale soup, but because I have them in the garden, I am going to go ahead and use some, just a couple, to give it extra nutrition and flavor, especially because I don't have the pork neck bones for the broth. Alright, so how I start my soup is I make a broth. I usually use pork neck bones, but I didn't get to the store to get them, so I'm using a ham bone that I had in the freezer for just such occasion. I chopped one onion and like 3 to 5 cloves of garlic, 2 bay leaves, cracked peppercorn, and if I wasn't using a ham bone, I would salt it, but because the ham bone has, you know, salt from preservatives, I don't need to add it quite yet. I'll just do it to taste at the end, or somewhere along the line I'll add some salt. So this is the first step, making a nice, wonderful, yummy broth. Alright, so I have been letting the broth stew and bubble and stew as long as possible. Most of the time I do it all day. This was about half a day. And you see the moisture has been released. I came and stirred it and rotated the bone over and over to get the good bone broth going. So now I'm going to remove that bone, and when I do the pork neck bone method, I usually will sit there and pick all the meat off of the pork neck bone but I'm not going to do that with this because I don't really want ham in my soup. I just wanted the good flavor of the broth to be a nice pork broth. And so I'm removing the bone, and I'm removing little scraps of meat. Now a lot of times I'll run it through a strainer, but it's crunch time now because everybody's asking when's dinner. So I'm going to speed this process along and just take out those. I don't think I've left anything behind. And then I'm going to wash this kale and get any of the foreign debris out. Wash the carrots and chop them up. Chop up the kale. So I use kale. I don't normally use carrots, so you can skip that. And I use potatoes. So I'm going to cut up some organic potatoes. Next year they'll be my homegrown potatoes, hopefully. And I'm going to add the potatoes and the carrots to the soup first. Let them cook a little bit. Kale does not take long to cook, so I don't have to add that right away. And I get out my Portuguese cherries, and I'll cut that up into slices and add that to the soup with the potatoes and the carrots, and that's it. Oh, and at the very end, at the end I'll add my kale, and then once the kale is done cooking, I'll add my red kidney beans because they're already cooked. So I'll just add those at the end, and voila, we have some kale soup. All right, I have added my potatoes, my cherries, and my carrots. Carrots are not typical, and I am gonna wait until the potatoes are just about fork tender. And then I'm going to add all this beautiful kale. The kale shrinks down in the broth, so a lot turns into a little. And then I will add 2 cans of red kidney beans as well. Alright, that is pretty much it. We're going to let it heat through the beans and just cook the kale just a tiny bit more. And we will be able to serve this up for our dinner. We don't need anything else. The only thing that I would have with this dinner, if I could choose a side dish, would be Portuguese rolls. Only sold in the Portuguese grocery stores and bakeries located in the region of New England I grew up in. So I don't have access to that. Boo-hoo. So I have to just accept this loveliness. I do have some bread, but it is not the same, but it will be good. So that's it. I just want to thank Part-Time Permies for inviting us to do this collaboration with them. This is our winter homestead meal, and we are very excited about eating it up. Please like, share, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time on Wholesome Roots.